Hello, everybody. Okay. I'm hearing myself double. It's obviously not a proper show unless we have audio problems, right? So here we go. How are you guys doing? So first order of business, roll call. As always, the roll call. I want to make sure you're all present and accounted for. I don't know who's new here. Welcome. I don't know who's been here a while. You may be familiar with the audio the audio problems. The goddamn algorithm problems that YouTube gives us. They be shoving us in a hole, right? Because they promote mainstream media. It's true, right? You ever watching a video on this channel or another independent channel, and then the next thing they play to you is like CNN or some diarrhea. So make sure you comment, you say something. I don't know, maybe the last thing you ate. Anything. Preferably something to do with politics. That would actually be the best option, right? Since we're here to discuss politics. But and report. So that's number one. Also, I would kindly advise you to sign up on Telegram. Every time I go live, you will get a notification on Telegram. Every time I go live, you might not get a notification on YouTube. I don't know if YouTube notifies you. There's some people who told me they had the bell thing on and still didn't get notified, so I don't know. Anyway, we got hold on, let me bring up the thing over here. Very nice. We got over 100 watching, 120 watching. You know, hopefully the numbers keep going as usual. And we got 126, but only 94 likes. This is unforgivable. Don't make me get mad. Come on, man. Don't do me dirty like that. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin, man. Christ. So I'm not going to start off with the Israeli thing first. Okay, it has to get progressively worse. So although it is Israeli. It is Israeli. So Israel is bombing Syria again. How many times have I said that in a video? Like I've lost count. I've literally lost count. It's not like I'm not exaggerating. I'm sure you guys have lost count. The Israelis themselves have admitted to bombing Syria hundreds of times. It's probably over 1,000 now, and we're talking just since 2011. I don't mean in general, since the inception of the the little Satan. I can't remember who came up with that, but anyway, they're bombing Aleppo, right? So let me pull up some articles for you and show you what's going on, because they're quite scarce anyway. It's not like the mainstream media give a crap about reporting this. This is from the Times of Israel, right? Let's take a look. So what do the Times of Israel say? Don't you just love the title? Syria says Israeli airstrikes target northern Aleppo region. Like as if it's not real. Like, Syria has so many resources and money and people just running around, and they're so bored and have nothing to do except go make up stories about Israel bombing them, right? We're just like swimming in money, man. We're like swimming in free time and leisure. There's just nothing to do. Let's just go make up a story about Israel bombing us, right? So Syria says, right? Meaning it's like supposedly not true or something. And then underneath, Damascus claims to repel Israeli raids. No immediate reports of casualties or damage. The IDF does not comment, right? So IDF, this is an acronym for the Israeli Defense Forces, also known as the Israeli Occupation Forces. So let's go with IOF. Now it says here, Israeli aircraft launched a number of missiles at targets near the Syrian city of Aleppo late Monday, Syrian state media said. Okay, so Aleppo, as you guys may or may not know, is the largest city in Syria. Damascus is the capital. Aleppo is not the capital. Aleppo is the economic capital, if you will, right? It's the largest city. It's the largest population. Very important. Suffered greatly during this war. It's being rebuilt, but still it suffered greatly. It's a very, 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 very ancient city, right? Just like Damascus. So Damascus is where I'm born, and it is the oldest city in the world. Now, a smartass would come along and say, no, it's the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. Yes, but for a Syrian, I'm not interested in hearing that. So we're just going to go with the oldest city in the world, right? Because both are cool. Don't get me wrong. They're both cool, right? Aleppo is also not as old, but it's also very old. It's a long history, and it has a very cool citadel there, which I think it's survived many wars, but I think it's it's done okay compared to the market there, for example, which has been completely burnt. And that is a shame, because I've never really, I've only landed in Aleppo. I've never actually visited Aleppo, which is a great, great, great shame. In any case, the Israelis don't seem to care much, and they're bombing it, right? Now, under here, this is very interesting. As always, who do they quote about this? They quote the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in the UK, right? It's a war monitor that has activists on the ground in Syria. And again, it's very important to highlight that this is it's not my words. It's mainly viewed as an opposition source, which is why all of the anti-Syrian media outlets use it, and the opposition media use it. Why? Because they report more on Syria, the Syrian Arab Army, or Russia doing such and such, whether it's true or not true, than anything else, right? So in any case, it's kind of like the white helmets, not to the same degree. Obviously, the white helmets is, we actually have proof that it's created and funded by the British FCO and other organs of the British government. However, this is definitely the Syrian Observatory of Human Rights. You always see that, whether it's CNN, BBC, The Guardian, they always reference this source. And well, it's just important that you know that. I mean, you can draw your own conclusions then if what they're reporting is accurate. But anyway, here's some videos of that. Let me show you. Again, it's usually when these things happen, I can gather up some more footage, but it just happened right now, so you'll have to forgive me. Here's from Sana, so this is Syrian Arab News Agency. I don't know if that's there you go. They're probably intercepting something. Hold on, let me see. So it's funny because they actually admit here the IDF has launched hundreds of strikes in Syria since the start of the civil war in 2011 against moves by Iran to establish a permanent military presence in the country and efforts to transport advanced game-changing weapons to terrorist groups in the region, principally Hezbollah. Now, again, this line here where they admit that Israel has bombed Syria hundreds of times, this is like an anomaly. Because usually they don't admit to that. But you've had Israelis admit to this, and I think it's much more than 100 times now. And that's just bombings. We're just talking airstrikes. Never mind other things they've done. So there's the ex-Mossad chief who's admitted that, Israel was helping al-Qaeda fighters, giving them medical assistance, logistical support. That's just what he admitted to. It's probably more than that. But that in of itself is astonishing, right? So al-Qaeda, supposedly the United States' biggest enemy. They bombed 19 countries and started so many wars to fight al-Qaeda, and then Israel, their greatest ally, is working with them. So it's a great interview with Mahdi Hassan on Al Jazeera. You should watch it. It's on the channel. We've commented on it before. And other than that, they don't seem to mention anything else, right? Because it's just about Iranian militias, right? So earlier when we had Rania Khalek on, we were talking about how in the Western media or the Israeli media, they call this Iranian-backed militias, whatever the hell that means, right? And even in the sentence right here, they try to justify it like, oh, look, the only reason Israel was in Syria, it has no right being in Syria, is to prevent these really bad Muslim terrorists and stuff, dude. First of all, it's none of your business who is in Syria, but you know why? Because Syria is a sovereign country. So whether you have people from Iran there or people from Timbuktu or wherever, that's none of your fucking business. Let alone does it give you the right to come and start bombing people. This is absurd. Just imagine the reverse. Always when you see shit like this, just imagine the reverse. Imagine if Syria was bombing Israel because it didn't like some American installation there. They would start a war. But apparently they give themselves the right to do this every week. So the fundamental issue here is that you have colonizers who are coming and undermining the sovereignty of Syria, and then they are also attacking the sovereignty of its neighboring countries. They are occupying Palestine illegally and then using occupied Syria, the Golan Heights, right, as another staging point to launch these attacks every week. So they try to frame it, it's like a counterterrorism thing. No, you're the terrorist because you're violating Syria's sovereignty. You're doing this every week. They don't even have an international mandate. They don't have permission from anyone to do this, right? So even when they talk about, rules-based order, like, Israel respects international law. No, you fucking don't. There's so many UN Security Council resolutions that they haven't adhered to. Never mind the fact that they have no permission to do this. It's not like they went and got permission from the UN Security Council. It would still be wrong, in my view. But they don't even have the legal backing to do this, right? So every way you look at this, morally, legally, it's just fundamentally an attack. And then they talk about defense, like they're going to Syria to bomb Iranian targets for defense. No, it's not defense. You are the aggressor. Syria is, carved up in 3 parts. It can barely stand on on 2 legs. One leg. Never mind 2 legs. Syria can't even keep up. It's under sanctions. There's no food. There's no fuel. It's been at war for 10 years. It's been carved up in 3 parts. And this is what Israel does. Israel comes in and contributes to that, right? And this is not me saying that. I'm not saying that. Me, Richard Medhurst, the ex-chief of the Mossad, is saying that when he was talking to Mehdi Hassan on Al Jazeera. He said that they were he asked him, why is the Mossad, why is Israel working with Al-Qaeda? Why are you helping these terrorists inside Syria? And he said in so many words that it's because they have a common goal. What is that common goal? It's to topple the Syrian government. It's regime change. It's to keep the country in chaos. So this is more about attacking Syria and Syria's allies than about defensive, whatever the hell, defensive strikes, whatever that is. The Israelis use that. The Americans use that. No, this is not defensive. This is not defensive. This is not defensive. This is offensive. And whether they admit to that or not, I mean, this is entirely irrelevant. I'm not interested in having a discussion with people who cannot even admit the basic fact. We all know it's Israel. Who else has the equipment and the motive to do these attacks? You don't need the Israelis to necessarily admit to it. Just to give you an example, I mean, this is true in World War II. You could hear just from the engine, you could tell what plane that is. It's a Messerschmitt, it's a German plane, a Focke-Wulf, or maybe it's a Spitfire, or it's a Mustang P-51, whatever. You could tell just from the engine noise what country that plane is from, and you could still do the same thing today. They sound different, right? The Israelis have American jets, the Syrians have Russian jets. And the Syrians most definitely would not be bombing their own goddamn cities, right? So we know who this is, and they've admitted to it, and they've admitted to what the strategy is here. You have all these countries that have come together to attack Syria, and here, I'm reading from several people on Twitter who are saying that the source of this is Al-Mayadeen, right? They're saying that the targets of these strikes tonight, so we're talking about in Syria, it's 20th of July already, right? So Al-Mayadeen is saying that the targets for the scientific research, God, I can't even speak anymore. The Scientific Research Center, okay, in the southern countryside of Aleppo. That's what the target was. And again, it's always like they could bomb an empty field with a bunch of cows in it, and they would say like, oh yeah, this is, it's defensive strikes against Hezbollah. They literally did that. I'm not kidding. They killed a bunch of sheep. They killed a farmer's sheep. Like, this is how cruel they are. They don't even respect animals, like in human, nothing. They're just fucking bombing anything. Right? And then calling it defensive. What the hell are you talking about? Like, have people forgotten that Israel is occupying the Golan Heights in Syria since 1967? Who is the aggressor here? You're literally illegally occupying the country, and then you talk about defense? What? Anyway, this is astonishing, right? How barely any outlets cover this, and how regular it is. Right? This is something that I said at the beginning, how they do this so often. It's almost every week, really every week. And the United States, the international community, whatever that means, they don't care. Unfortunately, they don't care. And this is something that speaks to the mindset, the colonial mindset. It's like one set of rules for, the Western nations, the global North, and another set of rules for everyone else, right? So again, if Iran or Syria would attack Israel with, I mean, just look at what they do to Gaza. Look at the Palestinians. A gas balloon, a fucking balloon is enough reason for the Israelis to launch airstrikes. A balloon, right? But it's okay for Israel to come and bomb Syria every week with F-16s or whatever else they're using now. With your own logic, Syria should respond as well, right? No. Only the United States, only the Israelis, they have the right to self-defense, and everyone has to shut the fuck up. That's their logic. That's their bullying and their aggression. That's what it is. They're oppressors. This is how oppressors behave and oppressors think. Right? 2 sets of rules. So I'm glad there's no casualties. I hope that stays true. and that there are no reports of casualties. I hope that stays true. But other times, it's not the case, right? That's not the case. So if the Israelis are admitting to this much, and when I say this much, the things we just went through, the bombing, the hundreds of airstrikes they've done in just the last 10 years to keep Syria in chaos. What else do you think they're doing? If they admit to helping Al-Qaeda, what else do you think they're doing, right? It's not just them. That's the problem. It's the Israelis, the Saudis, Turkey, the United States. It's so many parties that are coming in to carve up Syria. That's what it's about, man. That's what it's about. So just keep in mind when you hear this nonsense about, oh, they're hitting Iranian-backed targets. First of all, you have no evidence of that. Second of all, it's none of your fucking business if there are Iranians in Syria, because Syria and Iran are two different countries. None of your business, right? It's just like, this is so crazy. You know, if you want to go to the United States or to the UK or like, you know, or visit the Israeli occupation, like how many papers they ask from you, right? So I'm lucky. I'm a British citizen, but there are other people who are not so lucky, right? They don't have a British passport. Do you know how difficult it is just to go on holiday? Do you know how difficult it is? Like if my mother just wants to visit the UK, right? Like how many papers you need just to go on holiday there, just to go on vacation. But it's totally fine for them to like come and fucking invade you. You know, you always hear like these Republicans talking about, immigration and, we got all these people coming over the border, but they go and like violate the borders of like a dozen, 2 dozen other countries around the world. Again, 2 sets of rules. Do you understand? This is how it works. 2 sets of rules. So we're not done with the Israelis. The main story is obviously, as you can see, it's in the headline in the video. So just before I continue, wow, I see we got, I think, 250 people watching. Very good, very good. Make sure that you hit the like button because I only see 180 likes. Okay, so we want to get those numbers equal. By the way, before I continue, Claudia made something for me. Yo, this is insane. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to pull this up for you. Apparently, I didn't know this. I thought we were 425. Yes, we're 425. Look at this. This is astonishing. So, dude, check this out. Look at that. Astonishing. We're at 425 members on Patreon. That is unreal. We're already halfway to the goal. That is unreal. I'm so grateful for you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. All the links are below. I want to keep going with the politics, and I'll get to all of your questions and your comments afterwards, because there's a lot to cover. You guys are very kind, very, very generous. So thank you so much for that. That is crazy. 425. Wow. 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 Unbelievable. All right. So let's continue. Let's continue. And by the way, I just want to say something. Everything I just told you, like, you will never, ever hear this in your life on mainstream media. Ever. Like, dude, just for saying like 1% of that, you would get fired. Criticizing Israel and working in corporate media or mainstream media, this is taboo. This is the biggest sin that you could possibly fucking commit. This is, you end your career. It's over. It's over. It's not even like, you know, they'll kick you out of one outlet. No, you'll be blackballed. You can't go anywhere after that for criticizing Israel. So, I mean, it's insane. It's like this entire section of reporting this truth about colonization of Palestine, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, the occupation in Syria and in Palestine. Like, you can't talk about this. What the fuck? And then they have like Middle East correspondents who just like, you know, casually discard like an entire area of the Middle East because if they covered it like accurately, if they actually told the truth, they would have to criticize Israel, so they just don't bother with it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, speaking of Israel, let's continue. Let's continue. Let's continue. Right. So we have a slew of revelations in regards to this NSO group. NSO Group is an Israeli company, and they developed a spyware called Pegasus for mobile phones to hack people's mobile phones, okay? And right now, several outlets news outlets and journalists in several countries. They collaborated with Amnesty International, and they came up with something called Project Pegasus, right? So Pegasus being the spyware. And they've done forensic analysis and looked at what the Israelis have been doing with this spyware, okay? So I just want to show you very quickly the title here. Forensic Methodology Report, How to Catch NSO Group's Pegasus. Okay, so this is published on 18th of July, 2021. Okay, and I'm just going to read you a little bit. NSO Group claims that its Pegasus spyware is only used to investigate, quote, terrorism and crime, and, quote, leaves no trace whatsoever. This forensic methodology report shows that neither of these statements are true. This report accompanies the release of the Pegasus Project, a collaborative investigation that involves more than 80 journalists from 17 media organizations in 10 countries, coordinated by Forbidden Stories, with technical support from Amnesty International Security Lab. So when they say 17 media organizations, I mean, we're talking about The Guardian, we're talking about PBS. It's a lot. It's a lot. And the findings are quite incredible. They're quite incredible. Okay? So Amnesty International Security Lab has performed in-depth forensic analysis of numerous mobile devices from HRDs, also known as human rights defenders, and journalists around the world. Okay, so they took people's phones, basically. You know, people who are usually targeted for surveillance by various governments and politicians, such as journalists, and as you see, HRDs, human rights defenders, right? So people who expose corruption and wrongdoing. They went and took their phones and analyzed them to see if there were any traces of this Pegasus spyware. Okay? Now, man, I don't even know where to start. Like this company is so shady. So basically, the people who founded NSO Group, right? They come out of this unit in the Israeli military, which is Unit 8200. Okay, it's basically a signal intelligence unit, right? They gather and analyze. You know, whatever it could be, radio transmissions, telephone calls, whatever it is, signal intelligence. Every armed forces has this, you know. It's basically a unit inside the Israeli army, and all these people that have graduated from it, or left it, basically, because they have to serve 5 years in it. It's a bit longer. They go on to create, you know, private companies, or at least on the surface they're private, like this, like NSO Group. This is perhaps the most well-known one, okay? So these like elite hackers and people who've been working in army intelligence, they go and use their knowledge to do this, okay? And the Pegasus spyware, it exploits vulnerabilities on Android and iPhone, including the latest 14.6. Although I just saw last night, I think they've updated to 14.7 on iOS. But still, we'll go into the technical side of it. But I just want to give you background information on who is behind this company, okay? And what do they do with this spyware? What does NSO Group do with this Pegasus? They've gone and sold it to various countries. They don't tell you who these countries are. It's a secret, right? So they say they have a list of a few dozen countries, but we don't know what that list is. And they also have a blacklist. So there are a couple of countries they don't sell to, right? And I'm 100% certain Syria is on the blacklist. But we know Saudi Arabia wasn't, right? This is, again, the lovely paradox where apparently Syria is such a grave human rights abuser, but apparently Saudi Arabia, where women can't even drive and are treated like second-class citizens, that's totally fine. You know, that's a great ally of the United States and Israel, right? So anyway, the NSO Group, they say that they sell their spyware to vetted governments, right? And they check their human rights record. I'm serious. I'm not making that up. They actually say this. So the fact that they've gone and sold this stuff previously to Saudi Arabia tells you everything you need to know. Really. And this is why we often speak about Israel and Saudi Arabia having relations under the table, secret relations. They haven't normalized ties officially, you know, like they did with Bahrain and the UAE, but they will eventually. And they have strong ties under the table, most certainly. So I just want to go back to the most famous incident involving this Pegasus, which is the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. So he was a Saudi Arabian journalist who was working for the Washington Post, right? He had vast amounts of insider knowledge about the kingdom, and he basically was in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in Turkey, and they iced his ass. They killed him. They dismembered him. I mean, it's disgusting and extremely brutal, right? So he wasn't American, but he was working for an American news outlet, the Washington Post, and he was living in the United States. And he went to the consulate to pick something up, at the Saudi consulate in Turkey, and they killed him inside, right? And it's been long rumored that this spyware, Pegasus, was used to get him. Because once they infect your phone, they can record your phone calls, they can activate the camera, the microphone, they can steal your contacts, they can steal your text message, everything, the whole device. And as I mentioned before, this works with Android and iPhone, and not even the latest software update can fix it, right? So if you have iOS 14.6 or 7, it makes no difference. They're so ahead of it, man. Same with Android. There's nothing that can stop it. And so it's been long rumored that they used Pegasus to track him, to find his location. And now there's evidence of that. So I'm imagining the phone disappeared with his body, right, inside of the Saudi consulate. However, look at this. So this is released today in The Guardian, okay? This came out in The Guardian. As you remember, The Guardian is taking part in this project, Project Pegasus. And so what do they say here? Okay? What do they say here? U.S. intelligence agencies, okay, had already concluded that the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, was responsible for ordering the murder of Khashoggi, a former Saudi government insider whose criticism of the kingdom's regime in the pages of the Washington Post was seen as a threat to the Saudi heir. So do you remember this report over here from U.S. intelligence agencies? We covered this on the channel. This was released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, right? So now that's Avril Haines. She used to be in the Obama administration, and now she is the Director of National Intelligence. She released that report. It's one of the first things that came out. And basically, there's no sanctions on Biden, right? Which is there's no sanctions from Trump or Biden on Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, I'm against sanctions in general because they're siege warfare, right? I can see what they're doing to Syria. It's awful. I can see what they're doing to Iran, to Venezuela. So I'm against sanctions, but it just shows you the double standard, right? Like they put sanctions on Syria for quote unquote human rights abuses, and same thing on Iran, but they don't do it to Saudi Arabia, right? It's interesting. And let me just show you what it says here. A team of Saudi agents killed Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul during his visit there to pick up documents he needed to get married to his fiancée, okay, who later became an outspoken advocate for accountability over his murder. Now let's get to his fiancée, because she was in this clip that was also published yesterday by PBS Frontline. As I told you, they're also part of this project. Let's take a look at this clip, all right?
Of the spyware called Pegasus, and the Israeli company NSO Group that sells it to foreign governments.
The government can see anything on the phone, including pictures, contacts, listening into calls.
As part of the investigation into Pegasus, Washington Post reporter Dana Priest traveled to Istanbul. Working with the journalism nonprofit Forbidden Stories, the reporters were given access to 50,000 phone numbers concentrated in countries known to be NSO clients. They included journalists, politicians, human rights activists, and Jamal Khashoggi's fiancée, Hatice Cengiz. Dana Priest and a producer working for Frontline and Forbidden Stories met with Hatice to verify if her phone had in fact been hacked.
What I'm doing is basically a backup, and based on this backup we will look if there is any trace of infection, past or current. What we're looking for is traces of a software called Pegasus.
I remember the first days after the murder, a lot of times they try to hack my email. And then Gmail was sending to me emails that time. Someone tried to open your account or something like that.
The simple ones are like that message. The really sophisticated ones, they don't need a message. They don't need you to do anything.
Really?
Yeah.
But why people say the iPhone, the more safe to, no one can hack or...
That's what the iPhone says, the company.
Okay.
It's not true. So the Pegasus software can, if it gets inside, I don't know if it gets inside every time it tries, but if it gets inside, It can turn your microphone on so that whoever is doing it can listen to what you're saying and what other people are saying. But it also can go into your email, your WhatsApp, your contacts, your pictures, your videos, and it can just steal them all, make a copy of everything. And then, our thought is if it's doing that against people like you, who are not terrorists or criminals, then why?
All right, so it's incredible because they did an analysis on her phone, and guess what they found? They found that she was infected by this software.
Part of what we want to show, what we think we know, what we are discovering, and what we're researching is, no, they use it against civilians. And why would they want to know what you're doing?
Yes, it's my personal life. It's my secret life.
So here from The Guardian, look at what they say, right? Forensic analysis, okay, revealed that Shenjig's phone was first infected with Pegasus just 4 days after his murder on October 6, 2018. Her phone was also hacked on 2 other days in October 2018. Further attempts to hack her phone followed in June 2019, although they did not appear to be successful. Okay? They also mention, just forgive me, I need to scroll up over here. So his wife's name, yeah? Hanan El-Latar, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Her phone was also targeted. So they targeted both his wife and his fiance's phone. And it's really hilarious because if you go look at the response from NSO Group, because they of course put out a response to all of these revelations in The Guardian and PBS, look what they say. Look at their response, okay? Are you ready? Their response was published in full in The Guardian. Here it is. They say, okay, NSO Group will continue to investigate all claims of misuse and take appropriate action based on the results of these investigations. Okay? That's what they say. However, they contradict themselves before. They contradict themselves before. All right? Because up here, they say that NSO does not operate the systems that it sells to vetted government customers and does not have access to the data of its customers' targets. Okay, so if you don't have any access to the data, how could you possibly investigate what's been done with your software? You're just saying you don't have access to anything. You don't even know what your clients are doing with the software. So how did you investigate any misuse? This is incredible, right? So they say NSO does not operate its technology, does not collect, nor possess, nor has any access to any kind of data of its customers. Due to contractual and national security considerations, NSO cannot confirm or deny the identity of our government customers, as well as identity of customers of which we have shut down systems. And here we go. As NSO has previously stated, our technology was not associated in any way with the heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi. We can confirm that our technology was not used to listen, monitor, track, or collect information regarding him or his family members mentioned in your inquiry. We previously investigated this claim, which again is being made without validation. I don't know how to take them seriously because they're literally saying in the last paragraph, in the previous paragraph, they don't know anything about the software once it's sold. They don't know they don't know what the client governments are doing with it. They don't have any data. They don't have any access to the data. How could you possibly know then what Saudi Arabia was doing with it? So now, well, Khashoggi's phone, I don't know where that is. But his wife and his fiance, they have forensic evidence now that this Pegasus spyware was on there. And we know that NSO Group sold this to Saudi Arabia. They sold the Pegasus to Saudi Arabia. So do you really believe them? Let me put it to you this way. Let's say by some extraordinary chance, Pegasus was not involved in the murder. Like they didn't use it to track his movements to the consulate. They didn't, observe his plans and learn what he was going to do and set up the murder. Let's say Pegasus has nothing to do with it. Why on earth would you sell that to Saudi Arabia? They say, NSO Group says that they vet their clients before, right? That's what they say. And they said that they checked their human rights record. How did you check Saudi Arabia's human rights record and then deem them a suitable customer for spyware that can be used to hack journalists' phone. Like, on what plane of existence does any of that make sense? I think they're full of it. They're full of it. Does anyone actually believe this? That paragraph about that paragraph where they claim that they didn't help to kill Khashoggi, it sounds more like a legal disclaimer than an actual, admission to the truth. That's what it is. And here's another one that I don't know, you may or may not have heard about. This is from just a few months ago. This is from December 2020. Look what happened here. Take a look. 36 Al Jazeera journalists hacked using Israeli firm's spyware. Okay? So, watchdog suspects Saudi Arabia and the UAE being behind hacking of 36 journalists earlier this year. This, again, like I said, this came out in December. And when we say watchdog, who are we talking about? So there's a Canadian company. It's called Citizen Lab, right? Not company, excuse me. They're a group of researchers at the University of Toronto. And they have been tracking this thing from the beginning. They've been really breaking down what Pegasus is doing from the beginning. And they found that journalists at Al Jazeera were also targeted by this. So it's not just about Jamal Khashoggi. This is about, despots and authoritarian governments abusing this tool to hack everyone else, right? And in the case of Jamal, I mean, I really don't think you need to be Sherlock Holmes here, because Project Pegasus have already been Sherlock Holmes for us. They've went and found the evidence. They went and found the forensic evidence on 2 phones, his fiancée and his wife. So a few months on his wife's phone, it was a few months before the murder. And then, as we read now, regarding his fiancée, it was during the same time in October 2018 when they murdered him. So now basically, where they say that his wife's number was also contained in a leak of numbers that were selected by clients of NSO's candidates for possible surveillance. Okay, access to the leak was shared with The Guardian and other media by Forbidden Stories, a nonprofit organization, as part of this project, Pegasus project. Okay, so there's 50,000 numbers in this list. 50,000 numbers. These are just the ones they know of. These are just the ones they know of. And they've been able to tell that these numbers have been targeted by states, countries that have bought this Pegasus software. And I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So let's take a look at the list. Let's take a look at who's been targeted by this. Besides, of course, the journalists at Al Jazeera and Jamal Khashoggi's fiancée and wife. Let's take a look at what else we have over here. So this is also from The Guardian. Again, they've been putting out piece after piece today about this thing. It's really incredible. So let's take a look. At least 50 people close to Mexico's president, right, including his wife, children, aides, doctor, they were included in the list of possible targets, right, when he was an opposition politician. Rahul Gandhi, the most prominent political rival of the Indian Prime Minister, Modi. They also have Rwanda, the daughter of a Rwandan activist, right? Over here, Edward Snowden, I'll get to his commentary in a second. It's really incredible. And as a result, Amazon's stock price fell by 2.4%. And you want to know what's even funnier? You want to know what's even funnier? It turns out that these... the spyware, the Pegasus spyware, was using Amazon cloud service to execute some of the attacks, right? So just so you guys understand, the problem with this Pegasus thing is that, the spyware, is that in some cases, it needed the user to interact with it. So you would get a text message and, it's basically a phishing attack or a social engineering attack. Like, you would think it's from someone you know or it's something important. You would click on the link and then your phone would be hacked. There's another case of Pegasus being able to hack your phone with just one missed call on WhatsApp. Now, that does not require any user interaction, okay? That is scarier, because those kinds of hacks, I mean, you're doing nothing with the device. There's zero interaction with the device. And it's just infected with the malware, with the spyware. It's incredible. It's really incredible. And the problem is that people think like, oh, well, Apple is safer than Android or something. Yeah, okay, to an extent, perhaps. But from this, you can't do anything. This is what they found in the project just now, in the forensic analysis, that even the latest version of iOS, they found devices being hacked on 14.6. And since 14.7 just came out, I doubt Apple has had any time to fix it. This is, again, the problem. It's not like Apple knows what to go fix. It's not like Samsung or Google, they know what to go fix. Because they have things called zero-day exploits. So a zero-day exploit is an exploit that no one knows about. Right? It's like if you build a house and then, the house is made out of, titanium. It's well fortified. The windows have bars on them. And then you forgot about a little hole maybe in the basement or something where someone can get in. Right? It's something that you don't know about. So whoever designed the software or the mobile phone manufacturer, these are exploits. These are security vulnerabilities they don't know about. So they can't patch them because they don't know about them. And these things cost, they range from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars on the black market, and they're very expensive. So when we saw the Israelis hacking Iran's nuclear program, the centrifuges that they were trying to sabotage with these Siemens logical controllers, they used a zero-day exploit. They used actually several of them. So you can see right away that this is a government behind that, because no one has millions of dollars lying around to just go and get zero-day exploits, and also these certificates from Microsoft. So I've told you about 0 Days, great documentary, you should watch it. So these exploits, unfortunately, even you might catch one or two, but they hoard them. And if you go read the Vault 7 leaks from WikiLeaks, the CIA, they also hoard these zero-day exploits. So there are things that can never be updated, really, because no one knows about them, to update them in the first place, or to patch them, rather. Over here, Edward Snowden, I want to read to you his reaction to these NSO, this Pegasus project analysis of NSO Group's spyware. And he said that, it's probably the biggest leak this year, the biggest story this year. And what did he say in The Guardian, right? So speaking in an interview with The Guardian, Snowden said the consortium's findings illustrated how commercial malware had made it possible for repressive regimes to place vastly more people under the most invasive types of surveillance. For traditional police operations to plant bugs or wiretap a suspect's phone, law enforcement would need to quote-unquote break into someone's house or go to their car or go to their office, and we like to think they'll probably get a warrant, he said. But commercial spyware made it cost-efficient for targeted surveillance against vastly more people. Quote, if they can do the same thing from a distance with little cost and no risk, they begin to do it all the time against everyone who's even marginally of interest, quote unquote. Right? So the problem here, as he goes down to say there, if you don't do anything to stop the sale of this technology, it's not just going to be 50,000 targets, like we're talking about the 50,000 targets in the list. It's going to be 50 million targets, and it's going to happen much more quickly than any of us expect. Right? Part of the problem arose from the fact that different people's mobile phones were functionally identical to one another, he said. Quote, when we're talking about something like an iPhone, they're all running the same software around the world. So if they find a way to hack one iPhone, they found a way to hack all of them. He compared companies commercializing vulnerabilities in widely used mobile phone models to an industry of infectioneers deliberately trying to develop new strains of disease. I think it's a perfect analogy because, the NSO Group and other companies like them, they're not like, white hat hackers. They're not trying to find security vulnerabilities and then show them to, big software designers and engineers and trying to help them patch them. No, they're going looking for them so they can sell them to governments that kill journalists and target activists and target politicians and you name it. And like you said, the problem is if they can hack one iPhone, they can hack all of them. If you look at, this is from 2019. Basically, I can't remember the name of it. There's some exploit that they discovered in the iPhone 10. And this exploit was so big that it applied to all iPhones going back to the iPhone 5, I think. So it's the same exploit, and it could be used on all of these models of iPhone. We're talking about like 10 different models, right? 5, 5S, 6, 6S, the 6S Plus, whatever. Like, that's how bad this is. So what Edward Snowden is saying here, and it's completely true, if they can hack one iPhone, they can hack all of them. If they can hack one certain Samsung Galaxy, they can go hack all of these Samsung Galaxies. And you have no guarantee that they're just going to use it against one person, which is already not okay and already bad enough. It's not okay. I don't care if they use it against one journalist. That's still a crime in of itself. Never mind using it against 50,000 people or 500,000 people, whatever. Do you understand the problem here? So this entire industry is a scourge. They're just making money off of illegal surveillance and surveillance that is often used to harm, to attack, to kill political dissidents, journalists, and politicians. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And, I find this highly hypocritical when the United States and their European partners, what do? They come and say, like, oh, look, China is, launching cyber attacks. They don't take cybersecurity seriously. We're going to punish them and sanction them for this. Or Russia is launching cyber attacks. They call them malign actors, and they're so, they're basically irresponsible, and they don't take the cybersecurity of the United States and its allies seriously. What is this? Have you ever heard the U.S. talk about this? I don't recall Russia or China having an industry of people selling spyware to, various governments around the world so they can target journalists. What is that? What is that? They're hypocrites, man. They're hypocrites. They don't care about this. This is why Israel doesn't care that it sells this stuff to Saudi Arabia, because they're in bed with Saudi Arabia, right? This is why the United States doesn't care that Mohammed bin Salman killed a Washington Post journalist who's living in their country, because they're in bed with Saudi Arabia. It's not about the values. They're not democracies. They don't care about democracy or human rights or civil liberties and freedom of the press. This is fucking decorum. It's just bullshit that they feed you. They don't care about these things. They make money off of it, literally make money off of it, right? So this is really incredible. And I want to read you a thread over here from Kim.com. So you may recall who he is, because he was the founder of Mega, and the United States, they launched a legal crusade against him. They screwed him over. They stole all of his money. It's just, what can I say? You already know what we think of the U.S. legal system, right? The U.S. injustice system. So I just want to read you a little thread that he posted over here. Okay? Thread about mass spying from Kim.com. He says, you may have seen the latest news about the mass surveillance of journalists, activists, politicians, and even judges enabled by the Pegasus spyware acquired by governments from Israeli private surveillance company NSO Group. Here's what you should know. NSO is small fish compared to the instant surveillance capabilities of the NSA and CIA. Knowing your phone number, your IP address, or hardware identifier is enough to instantly backdoor any US-made device or operating system, and it's happening to millions of targets every day. Big tech is in on it. All devices that contain US-made chips and operating systems come with factory backdoors. Apple knows what's happening on their devices. They can detect permanent intrusions. Any data security expert can code an effective watchdog warning system in a week. All surveillance data NSO and their spyware clients have US spy agency. So all the surveillance data that NSO and their spyware clients have, US spy agencies have too. The US has access to the spy clouds of foreign states that utilize Pegasus. This spy data sharing is common and allows the US spies to indirectly spy on targets they are otherwise prohibited to spy on, right? So this is, again, you know how they told you, oh yeah, we don't use mass surveillance on US citizens? Yeah, they'll get their allies to do it for them. So the so-called Five Eyes spying alliance, the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, have over 20 small eyes spying agreements with other nations, including those utilizing Pegasus. Together, they are the largest criminal conspiracy in human history, committing criminal mass spying on an epic scale. And this is the end result. Politicians are puppets. The media is under deep state control. The courts are compromised. All spy targets have one thing in common. Their dirty secrets and mistakes are owned by those who run the world now, those who own the dirt. Democracy is dead. And just speaking of spy clouds, it's funny because now Amazon, given that they've been exposed, leasing their cloud space to NSO Group, they've now gone and shut down all of it. So this is published, again, July 19th from Reuters. Amazon shuts down cloud infrastructure linked to Israeli firm NSO. Okay? So I think this article originally maybe appeared in Vice. In any case, Amazon, their cloud service, Amazon Web Services, has shut down infrastructure and accounts linked to the Israeli surveillance vendor NSO Group, right? Its spyware was used in attempted and successful hacks of 37 smartphones belonging to journalists, government officials, and human rights activists around the world. NSO denied the report and said its product was intended only for use by government intelligence and law enforcement agencies to fight terrorism and crime. Yeah, well, the problem is that anyone who challenges Israeli colonization or Saudi Arabia's ruling elites, they're considered terrorists. So of course, in their mind, they're fighting terrorism. When they're oppressors. That's what's going on. And I want to say another thing. I distinctly recall Amazon also signing, I think it was a $200 million deal with the CIA to give them cloud services as well. So I think this was in perhaps late 2019, early 2020. So it's not, my point here is that, oh no, excuse me, this is actually much older. This is actually much older. Wow. This is from 2014. My bad. I'm just going to pull it up for you. And it's $600 million. Okay. A $600 million computing cloud built by an outside company, meaning Amazon here, right? So you can just see my point here is that Amazon has no problem dealing with, spy agencies and vendors of spy software and leasing their services to them. So, I mean, whether they do it to the NSO group or they do it to the CIA, it's not really a big difference. Actually, the CIA one is way worse. But nonetheless, I definitely agree with Kim.com's sentiment. And it's not just sentiment, it's quite simply fact. The capabilities that we're seeing from NSO group are I mean, that's shocking enough, right? So just imagine what they can do on a state level. And at the same time, though, I want to add something here is that even though people say NSO Group is a private company, or they say themselves, they claim to be a private company. I mean, how true is that, right? How true is that when the people who created it, its financiers, are all graduates from, not just the Israeli military, but specifically the signal intelligence, so Unit 8200, right, from military intelligence. Do you really think for 1 second, be honest with yourself, do you think for 1 second the Israelis would sell this technology to Saudi Arabia without knowing what Saudi Arabia is going to do to it and without being able to keep tabs on what they're doing with the software? Of course not. Not in a million years. Israel went mad because the United Arab Emirates wanted a bunch of F-35 jets from the United States, right? So like they won't even allow the United States to sell jets to other Arabs that they've normalized ties with, right? That's the point. This was after the so-called Abraham Accords. So you really think the Israelis are going to just give them this technology and they don't know what they're doing with it? No, they're probably they're probably using it to spy on whoever bought the stuff from them, right? So whether it's Azerbaijan or it's Saudi Arabia or Mexico, it doesn't matter, right? Seriously, come on, man, use some common sense. Use some common sense. This is not something they just give up like that. So nonetheless, I definitely think the capabilities of the CIA, NSA, Mossad, they're much more significant. You won't perhaps ever see anything published about that. Who knows? But it's thanks to people like Snowden that we know the full extent. And before Snowden, before Julian Assange, who believed these things? Like you could say, yeah, war crimes are being committed in Iraq, but no one would take it seriously because they're completely brainwashed by propaganda. You could say that the NSA is spying on everyone, and no one would believe it. So it's thanks to them, not only for showing us the true extent and the scope and the magnitude of what that spying entailed and what those crimes entailed, but also bringing it into the public consciousness. That is fundamental. That is fundamental. It's priceless, truly priceless. So they've really done a huge debt of society owes them a huge debt of gratitude. They've done a great service to society, and I don't just mean American society. I mean all over the world, truly. And I really think that it's important people understand this Unit 8200. I mean, yes, it's a bit glamorized, even in shows and stuff, but I wouldn't consider it strictly a private company. That's kind of like, just like you wouldn't really consider Twitter or Facebook a strictly private company. Are they really, if they're doing the bidding of the State Department and other things like that, is that really a private company? Just right now, they're working with the White House to censor people. You saw that. We covered it 2 days ago, right? So the White House is now making a list of people that they're considering as, that they consider spread misinformation, whatever that means, right? Depends on who's doing the censoring. And they're giving that list to Facebook and saying that they don't only want to ban them on Facebook, they also want to ban them on all social media. So like if you're banned on Facebook, you're banned on Twitter as well. That's what Jem Psaki, the White House spokesperson, was saying. Like she's bragging about it. Like they're so shameless. And then they have they have the stones to talk about authoritarianism and despotic regimes in other countries. What the hell? Look at what you're doing. That's literally fascism. You have a unison between state and corporations to censor people and implement these insanely blanket authoritarian laws. This is unreal. So I don't know if NSO Group is strictly private, but in any case, there is definitely a pipeline between that unit, 8200, and then private corporations like this. And this whole story is unbelievable, really unbelievable. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. So now they're saying, you know, the Pegasus project says it's 50,000 numbers. I can assure you this is the tip of the iceberg. And they have a list of, I think it was 11 confirmed countries, right? So they had a map showing the countries where Pegasus was operating, where they had, you know, the NSO Group had sold the spyware. And I don't even think it's accurate. I don't even think it's real, because it really fails to take into account that this is just what we've confirmed. It's not something that is, you know, that is final. This is just what they know. So if they say it's in Saudi Arabia and they say it's in, you know, Azerbaijan, and they say that it's in Mexico, those are just the ones they've confirmed. And another interesting thing, they've said that this doesn't work in the United States. They say that if the number targeted is a United States number, the software just won't work. They like fundamentally, you know, by default, they do not target US numbers. Do you really believe that? What did Barack Obama say about NSA mass surveillance? He said, we don't target US citizens. That was also a fucking lie, right? We all know it's a lie. How can you be so brain dead? Like you're expecting people who literally sell spyware to tell you the truth? Their whole game is to lie and subvert. Why would you trust them in the first place? You would trust the guy heading the mass surveillance programs to tell you, oh yeah, I'm totally not spying on you. That's literally the last person you should listen to about this subject. Anyway, I do not believe that. I do not buy that for 1 second. So that's just my opinion, but I am basing it off of you know, previous revelations that this is not true. When they say we don't target US citizens, that's a lie. That is a lie. Just like Kim brought up now, they will get maybe their allies to do it for them. It's still targeting, right? In any case, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Best believe that. Best believe that. I bet they're using this in every single country on earth. Who's to say? Who's to say that they sold it maybe to a country, right? Who cares? Maybe it's Saudi Arabia. I've also seen Hungary is involved, right? What if Hungary, for example, just as an example, what if they're using it against the whole world? You just told us you don't know what your clients do with the spyware you just gave them. So you obviously can't speak to what extent it's being deployed in. You can't. But I think they know. I can goddamn assure you they know, man. The Israelis would never, ever, ever, ever sell anything like that to the Saudis, to any other government, never mind the Saudis, without having full control over it. I can assure you. So there you go. That was you know, that was an extensive segment, but I don't think it even begins to scratch the surface, right? We'll be seeing a lot more from this. And again, I know Amnesty International, The Guardian, you know, PBS, it's not always tip top, huh? You know, like we saw that Jolani thing. But hey, well, we credit where credit is due. I mean, this is very extensive what they've been doing here, and I'm not surprised at all that Khashoggi's wife and his fiancée, their phones were targeted. Not surprised at all. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's barbaric what they did to him. I don't even know. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to begin to think about what they're doing to other people. So unfortunately, like I said, not like I said, like the forensics are saying, you can't do anything to protect yourself from this. It really sucks. Right? So they're saying in this report, you can't do anything to protect yourself, unfortunately. Even, you know, Edward Snowden was asked, like, how could you protect yourself? And he said, well, there are certain sectors you can't do anything. It's like, how do you protect yourself from a nuclear weapon? Right? And this is why Edward Snowden is saying that this entire industry needs to be banned. It needs to be banned. You cannot, it needs to be regulated so that you cannot have international sales of spyware, because this is what we end up with. Right? People are saying, oh, maybe it's just Khashoggi and we don't even know. And now that we know, you know, they'll be saying, oh, maybe it's just 50,000 people. It's just 180 journalists out of the 50,000. No. What do you think? They're just doing nothing with this extremely vicious tool? Come on, man. Don't be so naive. And so I really echo Snowden's sentiment here that this entire thing should be should be banned, because all they're doing is, it's like people who create viruses. Why would you do that? And just to show you very quickly about the vectors, the exploit vectors. So take a look. The attack vectors, excuse me. So this can be through SMS, WhatsApp, iMessage, or something else. Like I said, unknown vulnerability. Could be something that we don't even know, a method we don't even know yet. It gets into your phone, right? And once installed, it can theoretically harvest any data from the device. And as you can see here, that includes virtually everything. And for a journalist, for a politician, but especially journalists who have so much information passing through their hands, this is really an affront on democracy. If you believe in any sort of journalistic freedoms, you cannot be on board with this. So when Israel comes and says, "Oh, we're the only democracy in the Middle East," no, no. And this was not the reason that we knew. That's false. But this just, it's another. I don't even know what to say, man. Really. Unfortunately, there's no way to protect yourself from this. Some people might come and argue like, "Oh, well, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about." This is so stupid, right? This is such a stupid mentality. That's nothing to do with it. It's not about, "Oh, I'm not a journalist," or "Oh, I'm not a politician, so I don't care if they hack my phone." No, you should care. Because maybe they hack yours today, and then tomorrow they hack someone who's, is a journalist and a politician, and they kill him. Like we saw. You should care. And people do care. They're just not thinking hard enough about it, right? So this is very concerning and very, extremely illegal, and legally, ethically, just despicable, really. So you guys have been very kind. You've sent we got 400 people watching, but just 375 likes. Make sure you hit the like button so we pump those numbers up. I'm going to read your comments now. Thank you so much. This is from Not Enough Cereal. There's no such thing as enough cereal. So it says, regarding your website ban, apparently the .com top-level domain is under U.S. jurisdiction. I wonder if other top-level domains are safer, like .info, would be really useful to know for people starting up. So yes, you are absolutely correct. The .com domains are owned by an American company, which is called VeriSign. And because it's a U.S. company, the U.S. government thinks that it can just come and seize any domain that ends in .com. And it's not just that. It's not just about seizing domains. They've also sued people. They've accused them of piracy. There's so many legal battles that have been undertaken on this very premise, that the United States thinks that it can sue anyone who uses a .com domain or misuses it. According to them, they can just steal the website like they did with Press TV and various other outlets or news outlets that are not even based in the United States, right? So once again, we see the United States trying to extraterritorialize its, its authoritarianism, its laws. And I wish, it's kind of like a double, it's not even really true, because they are trying to extraterritorialize some of their laws, the really bad ones, like the Espionage Act against Julian Assange. But then they go and say, well, we're not going to give him any First Amendment rights. We don't recognize that he has any, right? Which is also U.S. law. But apparently they only want to pick and choose, they choose the bad ones, and those are the ones they extraterritorialize. So, they want to drag Julian Assange, who's not a U.S. citizen. He has not published anything in the United States. He doesn't live in the United States. Doesn't work in the United States. They want to bring him to the United States and punish him with United States law. What is that? What is that? Like, imagine if China was trying to drag away, Jake Tapper or someone from CNN, or I don't know, like to put them in a gulag or something, is that acceptable? No. The Americans would never be quiet. They would never shut up, right? And they always scream about, oh, China, human rights abuses. Yeah, but really? But they don't even have any proof of that. A lot of the things they say are completely made up. The CIA even admits to making things up about communist countries because that's what they do. They make propaganda. And second of all, we have proof of your human rights abuses, and they're far more extensive. So who are you to talk about that, right? And now, of course, as we saw with Press TV, they go and they just steal presstv.com, alfurat.com, and these websites are not based in the United States. Most of the journalists working there are not in the United States. Some of them were not even English language, right? So, not that it makes it okay to do it to an English outlet, not at all. But my point is that it just shows you how vicious they are, right? So you had Palestine Today, you had Al Furat, you had Press TV, you also had I think Al Masira, so I'm forgetting it's 33 outlets, right? I don't remember all of them. But even if it were just one, this is utterly, utterly unacceptable. I mean, just imagine if Iran went and completely took CNN.com offline forever. There would be outrage. There would be outrage. And we actually saw this a few months ago. Do you remember when the British, their telecoms regulator in the UK, it's called Ofcom. And Ofcom, which is basically the British equivalent of the FCC, Ofcom went and revoked CGTN's license. CGTN is a Chinese English language outlet, right? So they went and revoked their license. So they take you off the air. You can't broadcast on satellite anymore. That's it. They revoke your license. And in response, China banned the BBC, right? The British Broadcasting Corporation, which is it's funded by the taxpayer and it's state-run. And they claim to be independent, but I mean, you've got to be pretty naive to believe that. So once the Chinese did that in response, okay, everyone went mad. The British went mad. You had all these Western outlets going, oh my God, look at China. They're so authoritarian. And they banned the BBC. Yeah, but you didn't mind the British banning CGTN. What is that? What kind of glaring hypocrisy is that? These events are 2 weeks apart, by the way. Literally like a week, 2 weeks apart. Unreal hypocrisy, right? And they did the same thing with Press TV. They banned Press TV in the UK like a few years ago. I think a decade ago, maybe. I'm not sure. So Ofcom, the same British telecoms regulator, they just came and took Press TV off the air. And it didn't stop there. What did they do? Facebook would go and regularly take down Press TV's Facebook page, right? For no reason. This is what's so crazy. It's like they don't even tell you what you did wrong. It's just like, yeah, we're taking your page down. And I think the Press TV page is like 4 million followers, something like that. So it's a very big page. And then Google went and banned Press TV from all Google services, from YouTube, Drive, like you name it. It's just like, you can't use this anymore. And I think in Google's case, they cited sanctions, right? But with Facebook, it's harassment. Like they would take down the page for 3 days, they'd put it back up. Then, 6 months later, they just randomly take it down again. Like it's just playing cat and mouse for no reason, right? And this is why they're such hypocrites. They talk about press freedoms, but they don't mind harassing, censoring, completely shutting down foreign outlets. And the thing that just happened now with the Biden administration, the Biden regime, right, taking all these outlets offline is astonishing. I mean, it would be bad enough if Press TV was censored in the United States, but here they took it offline everywhere. So like if you're in Angola, if you're in China, if you're in Venezuela, you can't open PressTV.com anymore. It's gone. And there are several other outlets too, right? And what do these outlets all have in common? They're anti-imperialist. They're part of the resistance. Right? They belong to either Iran or its allies. They're anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist, and that's why they were taken down. And I mean, it's very clearly political, but they said that, Iranians don't have the right to use .com domains because they're under sanctions, right? Okay, well, why did they just take down these websites? They didn't go and take down other websites in Iran that were using .com domains. No, they claimed that Press TV is being run by the Quds Force. Remember Soleimani that Trump assassinated? He was the head of the Quds Force. It's an elite unit. It's one of the 5 branches of the IRGC. The IRGC is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, right? So they were seriously, listen. Like you need to understand what's going on. I'm not making this up. It's literally on the DOJ website. They were saying that Press TV and these other outlets are being run by one of Iran's special forces. And because those special forces are under sanctions, they don't have the right to use a .com domain without permission, so we have to take them online. What the fuck? What is that? That's like saying, I know people are going to laugh now because it's actually true, but it's like saying, this CNN is being run by Delta Force or the CIA, and so they have to be taken down, And again, there's some truth to that, of course, but in this case, it's not. They're not saying intelligence service. They're saying an elite fighting force, the Quds Force. So I don't think you can really compare the Navy SEALs or Delta Force or the SAS to that, but it's just so you get an idea, a sort of a general idea of what we're talking about here. And that's what they're saying, which is completely, utterly absurd, you know? And this is what they do. They harass foreign outlets. And the .com domain, it's unsafe. So Press TV, they've always had a backup domain. I think it's .ir. They also have another one, I think. I'm not sure, but the current one now is presstv.ir. The presstv.com is gone. And as you correctly point out, and as I mentioned before, the .com domain, it's not safe because they can come and seize it at any time. And you need to understand something, though. There's a nuance there because this is what they can supposedly do legally, right? They cite the law. They cite sanctions, which are executive order. And they've taken out websites that are not .com before, like WikiLeaks. That's .org, right? If I'm not mistaken. There are other websites, news websites, activist websites that are not ending in .com. They end in something else, and the United States has still targeted them. They've thrown them offline. They do interference. They run interference on them, so the signal, or they do these DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. So they either take the website completely offline, or they slow it down to the point that it can't even run. So they target websites that are outside the United States. They're not based in the United States, and they don't end in a United States domain like .com. So this is bullshit. Okay. Oh, they didn't get a license exemption. Like, and do you see again how Biden is just like Trump? Because he literally cited Trump sanctions to do that. So not only is Biden not removing all of these sanctions on Syria, Venezuela, Iran, he's using these sanctions from Trump to go and harass foreign media. And then people talk about voting out fascism. What the fuck? This is worse. Like Trump put the sanctions in place against the IRGC. Biden is acting on them, right? Although, again, these are not the worst of the sanctions. The worst ones are the ones that starve people, right? It's not, but still, they go hand in hand because they're keeping all of them in place. He's still starving people, and he's attacking the press. It's the same thing. And under Trump, they were, they banned Press TV from Google. So that was also, those sanctions were also being used under Trump, right? This is just incredible. It's really incredible. Like the level of deceit, of attacks, of aggression that they have against foreign countries, and how they turn around like, oh, we're a democracy, blah, 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 fucking blah. Get out of here, man. Get out of here. So I know that was quite a long answer, but it's a very important one because I don't think people understand how this is messed up. This is really messed up. Comrade Lo-Fi says, love you, Richard. I love you too, Comrade Lo-Fi. Thank you for your support. I'm very grateful. JM says, I appreciate your work, and I appreciate you, JM. Thank you so much. David has sent a tip, but there's no notes. Nonetheless, thank you very much, David. And Revolutionary Drew says, CIA colonialism in action. Very good. Very good. I've heard other funny ones too, although I don't know if I can remember them right now, but that's a good one too. Definitely. That guy says, love the content. So nice to have a non-American view on what's going on around the world. Thank you, and keep it up. I'm very grateful. I will always keep it up. And I mean, just earlier when I had Rania on to talk about Lebanon and Syria and Libya and Iraq, this is, even for me, it's very refreshing because I don't know, it's great. When you watch the news and you see what's happening and you see all these reports, especially about Iran so not just Arab countries, but also other countries like Persian, Iran, or whether we're talking about Afghanistan or China, Russia, like you see a lot of crap, and it's important to go and get multiple viewpoints and get a more clearer picture and not just one side. So, I totally agree with you, and I'm grateful that you see that here, and I'm very happy. Yair Navarrete says Google blockchain DNS. So my tech literacy ends here because I've heard about blockchain, but I don't know enough to say more. But that's what Yair says. So hopefully you can elaborate a bit more. This is where my tech literacy stops. So thank you nonetheless. You guys are very grateful, very generous. And I'm grateful for your tips. We got one over here from MM on Rockfin. MM says maybe Syrian cities should pretend they're still controlled by terrorists to prevent Israel bombing them. That's so fucking true, I swear. They should pretend it's like an Al-Qaeda stronghold and then Israel won't bomb them. Have you ever seen Israel bomb Idlib? Is Idlib under sanctions? I mean, I'm not saying anyone should bomb it or put it under sanctions. I'm showing you the hypocrisy of Israel and the United States. They only sanction everyone who is trying to live a normal, secular, stable life under Syria, how it was, right? That says everything you need to know. But that's a very that's a good one, really. We also got another one over here from Eric. Eric says the most violent contrast: those who receive the reward and those who shoulder the burdens, not a wise leadership. Absolutely. And I'm trying to remember what segment, in reference to what segment that was, but thank you nonetheless. It'll probably come in a second. By the way, I'm just curious, how many of you got notifications on Patreon or YouTube or Substack? Like, did you guys get a notification for the live stream? How did you get here? This is what I'm trying to nail down. Like, what is the most effective one? So please let me know, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Also, I got an email from Amazon saying our terms have changed, and I don't know if I should open it. It's probably a threat because I talked about their cloud service. Our terms have changed. We're coming to get your ass. No, hopefully not. Christian on Venmo has sent a tip over here. Let me read it. It's loading. It says, I typically only am patrons, among other things, to the right people. Jimmy Dore, Hampton Leftist, Grayzone, you, Jackson. Have Jackson on. He continues moving more left and continues to represent imperialism and actively gets smeared more and more. You'll help. So this, I mean, man, the thing is that today when I was with Rania, I don't know if you were on live earlier, we talked about one British guy and another American who basically, I've never even heard of them before, right? And they have like a huge following, and they're talking about Syria, and it reminded me of TYT, how you have these people at TYT who are smearing people like me, or I don't know, Aaron Matei, who've like been covering Syria or who are Syrian, and then pretending to pass themselves off as experts, right? So I think it's very important that you support these channels. I'm grateful to you, not just for me, but everyone else, and this is what we're going to see, unfortunately. You have people who don't understand these complex subjects, and their only response is to smear, right? So, like, they just say things like, oh, you're paid by Assad or something. Like, they don't actually have any responses to what we're saying because, it just completely obliterates their talking points and their whole reasoning, which is really rooted in colonial nonsense. So yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of smearing going on, but I only responded to what was said to me from TYT, and that's it. I'm not interested in more of that. But definitely, I'm always happy you guys sending me suggestions for more guests, and I'm grateful for your support. Thank you. Hold on, am I out of focus? I think I went out of focus for a second. Okay, it's back now. It's back. Let me just. We got a tip over here from Marissa. Thank you very much, Marissa. It's good to see you. And it's loading. It's still loading. It says, keep up the good work. I will, as always. Thank you for dropping by, Marissa. It's really good to see you and to hear from you. Thank you very much. And I think we also got something over here from, hold on, it's loading. From Andrea. It says, really enjoy your work as well as Rania's. Thank you. That's very sweet of you, and she really does great work. I'm very grateful for that. So, guys, if you have any more questions, I'm gonna keep going to the next segment. Just in the meantime, if you have any questions, shoot. There's the PayPal stuff and everything, and we are halfway to our goal on Patreon. So if you want to support anti-imperialist journalism, you want to support independent journalism, no-nonsense journalism, this is the spot. You're not going to get any of this foreign policy stuff anywhere else, or rarely if so. So this is the spot, and thank you so much. Patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. I'm honestly speechless that we're halfway to our goal. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just shoot below in the super chat thingy or over here. I'm going to put up these QR codes quickly, and we'll get to the next segment in just a moment. All right. I'm just prepping the new one. You guys are very kind. Thank you so much. So Just closing this out. This next topic is very heartbreaking, honestly. Very, very, very heartbreaking. So, you know, it's very gut-wrenching. I'm just telling you. All right. I'm back. So, in Canada, in the last months, in the last 2 months, you've had several mass graves that have been discovered. Right now, the number stands at about 1,600 unmarked graves. These are indigenous graves, the graves of native children who were sent to residential schools, boarding schools. It's the same thing. They just have different names in Canada. And I mean, it's so gut-wrenching, really. I did a whole report on this, a full episode just yesterday on Press TV. You should go watch it. I interviewed Nick Estes. He's from the Lower Brule Sioux tribe, and you know, he's a journalist. He hosts the Red Nation podcast, and he wrote about this in The Guardian. It's really extremely heartbreaking. So I talked with him about this subject. You should go check this out. It's on Press TV. Sorry, that's the wrong window. Here you go. So it's called Canada Mass Graves. It's on presstv.ir. You'll find it under shows and then the communique with Richard Medhurst. Go watch the full episode because it really goes into more detail. And I still want to tell you about what happened. So you had several of these residential schools in Canada. Here are their names. So one of them is Kamloops in British Columbia. Okay. And in Kamloops, what happened is they discovered 200 unmarked graves, 200 children on May 28th, 2021. So that's not even 2 months ago. And, you know, they were found by the Kamloops First Nation using ground-penetrating radar. So you have to think that this is not like the government who found them or something. No. These are First Nations themselves. These are, you know, natives themselves going and finding these things because the government literally buried these secrets. They kept this secret for decades and decades and decades because these residential schools, this is a program that lasted 120 years, right? And I'll tell you more about it in a moment. I just want to go through what's been found so far, which it's really heartbreaking. So that was on May 28th in British Columbia. The next one is Brandon. That's in Manitoba in Canada. Okay. And that was found on June 5th, 2021. There were 80 unmarked graves found there. Okay. On June 25th, there was a third mass grave that was found. And this was at Saskatchewan, over in Mariaville. Okay. It was discovered by the Cowessess First Nation, and they found 751 unmarked graves there. I mean, this is just unbelievable. I mean, you know, one is heartbreaking enough. 751 in the same school. 751. That's like, there are schools who don't even have that many pupils, right? That's an entire school. And they found 751 graves there. It's the largest mass grave that they found to date. Okay, and this was on June 25th. And then the fourth mass grave, this was in Cranbrook on June 30th. There, it was the St. Mary's First Nation that found them. And it was at a school called St. Eugene's Mission Residential School. And they found 182 unmarked graves. And then a fifth mass grave was discovered on July 15th. Right? Or, excuse me, it was announced on July 15th. So that's not even, this is not even a week ago. And that was 160 unmarked graves. And it was discovered by the Penalacoot First Nation at Cooper Island Indian Industrial School. So all in all, we're talking well over 1,000 unmarked graves of indigenous people, and most of them children. And the whole point of these schools, you have to understand something, is that, you know, the way the Canadian government tried to portray them is that, oh, you know, they're here to civilize the natives. Again, it's this completely disgusting, racist, colonial mindset, right? You're like, oh, we have to teach them the white man's way. That's what it is, right? And what they would do, they would go and kidnap, like, you know, today you would call this kidnapping because that's what it is. They would literally steal these kids. They would forcibly take them from their parents in their tribes and bring them to these schools and treat them like this, right? So, you know, these schools, the kids are going there, they got no medical attention, they were beaten, sexually abused, harassed, and killed, as we're seeing now, killed even. And you had this program lasting for 120 years. The last school that was closed is after I was born. It was closed in 1996. That's when they closed the last school. And this program went on for 120 years. So you have people alive today who were in those schools. And they were talking about how people would be disappeared, like they were killed. And no one would believe this. And the Canadian government, what they did in 2008 until 2015, right? They did this Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And this was basically to kind of, you know, provide transparency to the issue of these residential schools and to document the extent of the suffering and all, and, you know, everything that went on basically. And they said that about 3,200 children had died in that system, in these schools, in these residential schools. And they did not even find these graves. So my point here is that they, you know, in 2015, this commission issues a report, and the report itself is gruesome enough, but they haven't actually done all the work. Right here, right now, these mass graves that have been found, these are the First Nations who are finding them. These are Indigenous people finding them. The Canadian government did not help them do this and did not do a good job, obviously, nowhere near an adequate job in documenting what happened, because someone must have known what was going on. This happened recently. You shouldn't think that this is something of the past, like, oh yeah, before, you know, the Canadian government was treating natives badly and now it's okay. No. This is ongoing, because I don't know what to call this, except, I mean, calling it a failure is an understatement. This is genocide, and they covered it up. And, you know, the problem is that these are 5 schools. Just 5 schools, and look how many graves have been found. That's over 1,600 unmarked graves. In Canada, they had 139 residential schools that received federal funding. If you count the ones that were still residential schools but didn't receive federal funding, I think the number goes into the 300, right? So you had around 300 plus residential schools. So just think, with 5 of those schools, how many graves they found. What do you think if they checked every one of those schools they would find? I mean, it's really gut-wrenching. And I want people to understand that the point of these schools was cultural genocide. So they would take these kids from their families on purpose to cut them off from their communities, to cut them off from their tribes, their language, their heritage, like to make sure that, you know, they grow up and they can't continue the traditions, the practices, the culture, the language of their forefathers. It's cultural genocide, and that's the Canadian government's own report saying that in 2015, right? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And again, you don't need a whole report to tell me that. That's what it is cultural genocide. And, you know, in those schools, if they would speak their language, right? So if they wouldn't speak French or English, they would be punished, right? And when I heard that reminded me of something my mother told me about. I think it was I can't remember if she was talking about my grandparents or her grandparents, that basically when the French were occupying Syria, you could not speak Arabic, right? Like in school, they would, you know, they hit you on the wrist or something. I don't know what it was. I want my mom to come and speak about that fully, because she knows it better than me. But it just reminded me of that, although this is obviously to a much, much, much worse extent. But it's still, you see how there's this colonial mentality that they go into a country, they steal the land, they steal the resources, they commit genocide against the population, and then the ones that they can't kill or don't kill, they try to commit cultural genocide against them, try to isolate them and take them away from their families, from their communities, make sure that they cannot speak their languages anymore, and this is how it disappears, right? So it's extremely heartbreaking, really. And in Canada, like I said, it's around 300 plus schools. with and without federal funding. And I think in the United States, they had 350 of these schools. Although, again, don't quote me on this. I don't know if all of them were federally funded or that's including federal and non-federal ones. But still, it gives you an idea of the extent, and it shows you that this is these are colonial institutions, and they were widespread. They were widespread. It's I don't know, man. So I just want to show you something else over here. If you'll give me a second to pull it up. This is posted yesterday from Brandy Moore, I think. And this is at Carlisle Indian Boarding School. You can see they basically they came and gave these children who were buried in these unmarked graves a proper burial. Okay, so I just want to show you this video over here. Let me just read you the caption quickly. So, Brandy Moore says, the most beautiful burial I've ever witnessed after over 100 years. The children who died at Carlisle Indian Boarding School are laid to rest by the youth of this generation, wrapped in buffalo robes and back to the comfort of Grandmother Earth in their ancestral Lakota lands. So this is obviously, the burial is something that they've been denied on top of all the other things they've been denied. And, they talk about the neglect in those schools, like just medically neglected too. There was widespread disease. They wouldn't take care of them. Like, it's just so, it's really messed up. It's really messed up. And, I just, I don't know what to say, man. I don't know what to say. It's heartbreaking. And, it really shows you again how the whole process of cultural genocide and genocide itself, when you come to someone else's country and you colonize it and erase them, this is just 1%, like not even 1%. It's just a tiny part of the overall suffering that is inflicted on the native population, right? Whether we're talking about Palestine, we're talking about Native Americans, it's the same kind of barbarism, and it's really interesting, the interview I had with Nick, because I asked him a question at the end. Why is it important that people, what is the connection between the Palestinian struggle and the Native American struggle? And because on the Red Nation website where he has his podcast, they have a quote on there that I'm paraphrasing here. I think it's the Palestinian struggle is the barometer hold on, I'm going to pull it up for you. The Palestinian struggle is the moral barometer of indigenous North America. That's the quote. Beautiful quote. And I asked him to explain it, and he said that, it's important for people to understand both because they're fundamentally very similar. They're unique in their own right, of course. And he also told me something I didn't know, which is that actually during the hostage crisis in Iran, at the U.S. Embassy, the Iranians did not trust the State Department and the Americans. So the Native Americans were actually the mail carriers between the hostages. I didn't know that. That is absolutely incredible. And there are lots of extremely valuable knowledge and insight that he dropped. So I really, really encourage you to go watch the episode and listen to the interview because he's really doing great work, and he's going to make a documentary about that. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, it's just this. I really echo his words, and I want to underline and underscore again why it's so important for people to oppose colonialism in all its forms. So whether we're talking about 300, 400 years of genocide in the Americas, or what's happening right now in Palestine, it's the same beast fundamentally. And the natives, there's varying figures about this, but more or less 90+% of them were wiped out by disease, war, famine, and of course they still continue this practice even into the modern day. So my point here is, don't think this is something that was something a long time ago and everything is fine now. No, it's not. It's really not. Right? Like I said, there are lots of people who went to these schools who are still alive right now. Yeah. and they were robbed of learning their language or, learning their history, being with their families. I saw such a heartbreaking picture of how the parents, they were forbidden from seeing their children, so they would go and camp, across the road or across the street, like basically outside the school, so they could watch their children who had been kidnapped from them in the school. I mean, this is really this is monstrous, honestly, what the colonizers, the settlers did to the natives there, really. And again, this is recently. This is now. This is not something like, a few centuries ago. It's not. It's a continuation of that. This is an extension. These schools are an extension of the genocide and the colonization of the Americas. That's what it is. So, very important topic and very, very heartbreaking, equally heartbreaking. Just give me a second. I'm going to show you. I'm just going to play you very quickly a clip where Nick talks about this. And again, please go watch the whole thing because this is just a small piece of it. I'm just hoping that because I have the timestamp with me right here, maybe I can play it for you. Podcast, there's a great quote that says, Palestine is the moral barometer of indigenous North America. I was hoping, could you maybe tell us how the Palestinian struggle connects or relates to the Native American struggle and why it's so important for people to support and to understand both of them?
Yeah, I mean, there's direct ties going back to the 70s when the indigenous movement in North America was trying to seek representation at the United Nations. We didn't know how to navigate, the channels at the United Nations, and the Palestinians had mastered it, right? They had successfully, garnered international kind of support and solidarity for their movement. And so they taught us how to navigate those channels, and we owe it to them. We saw the struggles as the same, and this didn't have a lot of currency in the United States, especially with the ruling class, the liberal and conservative elite, because they didn't want us to think beyond the boundaries of the US and to see ourselves as global people. And Palestinians really taught us that, and I would say the situation, is very similar in terms of settler colonialism, the intent to eliminate a native population and to replace it with a foreign invading population. Like, that's the process that's underway in Palestine. It's what we experienced in the 19th century. We're still experiencing it, but not to the same degree as Palestinians are in terms of the intensity of actual, still physical combat and fighting and things of that nature. But it's important to point out that that settler colonial project would not be possible without the settler colonial project here in the United States. And that's something that we understand as indigenous people here.
Yep, that is really like such an important point. It's like you said, the Israeli settler colonial project would not be possible without the one in America, right? The settler colonial project in what is now called the United States and Canada, right? And go watch the full thing. I don't want to spoil it. It's very important. And yep. So Nick is great. You guys, I just want to read some of your comments over here. Ghassan didn't say anything, but I remember Ghassan from last time. Shukran ktir. I'm really great to see you. It's really great to see you. Ahlan wa sahlan, habibi. And we got another one over here from Pakiho says, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The survival rate of those so-called native residential schools were between 40 to 60%. There were over 150,000 children. Right. So this is extremely important what you just said. This is something I mentioned in the report, but like you just said, 150,000 children went through those schools in total. And that's just Canada. We're just talking about Canada here, or what is today called Canada. And Fakio goes on to say that the genocide still goes on. 1/3 of the Canadian population, Canadian prison population, is native. About 30% of the natives' water reserves are at high risk of contamination. Yeah, there's so many things beyond just like the what people maybe publicly or generally know about the genocide itself that are systemic, that are things that are institutional. So as you mentioned, the prison population is one of them. Nick mentions a few other ones. Again, I really strongly recommend you watch it, and it's really terrible. So I just want to say you're absolutely right. It does continue to today. It really does. Class Rules from New Zealand says people need to learn from New Zealand. They actually value and respect the indigenous Maori culture. Australia treats the Aboriginals like third-class citizens, and the real Tasmanians don't exist. Right. So I've never been to New Zealand. I'm not that familiar. I know a few Kiwis, but I think hello is kia ora. I'm not sure again. Don't. I'm butchering my. Someone who's Maori told me that, but I'm rusty on it. But yes, I do have the impression. I'm not sure. But I do have the impression that what you said is correct. That it's much better in New Zealand than in Australia and Canada and so on. But I'm not 100% sure. But I appreciate you telling me that. And thanks for the support, Class Rules. I really appreciate it. You're actually. I've heard that before from other people, so I'm tending to think that it is actually better in how. I actually saw something you just reminded me about a member of parliament a few months ago in New Zealand, and he was Maori, and they wanted him to wear a tie to parliament, and he was like, "Screw you! I'm not wearing your colonial noose." That's what he called it. That was brilliant. That was brilliant, and they couldn't force him to do it, so that was really good. I'm just checking over here that I read all of your comments. Emblemed Fate says, cultural genocide, you say, Rich? Well, we just added sanctions to the Xinjiang region of China based on the debunked Uyghur lie. How come we're not sanctioning Canada? Not that I want that, just pointing out hypocrisy of imperialist nations. Yes, absolutely. This is once again, like we see, they say they're committing genocide in China. What about this in Canada right now? Like, that's not genocide. The people went to school. They're still alive, many of them today, right? And these mass graves are being covered. That's genocide. That's literally genocide. And the schools themselves are part of a genocidal program. But of course, like you said, we don't think that Canada should be sanctioned. No, sanctions are bad. But it shows the hypocrisy. And it's, you're preaching to the choir, and so am I, right? It's so hypocritical. And one more thing that I wanted to add is, the Uyghurs, the first mention that I had not seen actually in the media was about Syria, because you actually have, I think, 5,000 of them in Syria who are part of some group in Idlib, some terrorist group. So once again, my point there is just like how, when they talk to you about Syrian opposition, like many of these people are not even Syrian. They just come in to fight and they're mercenaries. Anyway, just a small parenthesis. Thank you, JVB, for the tip. I really appreciate that very much. And over here, give me a second. I'm just trying to load this. This is from Reginald. Reginald says, thanks for covering indigenous American issues. Of course. I mean, it's very dark and heartbreaking, but it's important because, like we covered Palestine, we just covered that too, and all similar issues of what settler colonialism does, and not forget the people who have to pay for that, because they like to paint these countries as some kind of marvels and democratic. Yeah, but built at whose expense, right? Built at whose expense? Who is suffering for that? Who's being erased for that? This is important. This is important, so you don't need to thank me. I thank you for your support. Thank you. And with that said, I'll have all of the segments up shortly. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. Just shoot over here, and I'm going to go through the other ones that I missed. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anyone. So over here, we got one from Mary. Mary, thank you so much for your tip. That is a very, very generous one. I'm very grateful. Thank you. You're great. And if you guys want to support anti-imperialist independent journalism, this is the spot. Patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. Look at this. We're at 425, I think, unless I'm miscounting that. But nonetheless, we are halfway to our goal. That is absolutely amazing. If anyone joins, I'll play a crab dance as the tradition goes. That's it, man. That's it. Charmaine, thank you for your tip. I see that too. There's no note, but I'm grateful as well. Thank you very much, Charmaine. All right, guys. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the show. And I'm going to upload all the segments shortly. Please go sign up on Rockfin and Telegram because it's free. And, you know, we can stay in touch. I don't trust YouTube. If you saw a bunch of channels got demonetized, mine got demonetized, you never know. So it's good to have a backup. Go sign up on rokfin.com/RichardMedhurst. And I'm live streaming there right now. I'll pull it up to show you nonetheless. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You do have to make an account, but it's free. Like I said, it don't cost you a thing. Here it is. Take a look. So rokfin.com/RichardMedhurst. Wow. Almost at 13,000 followers. You guys are incredible. I thought we were at like 5 or 6,000 last time. But we're at 12,000. That's absolutely insane. Thank you so much, really. And you can support like for $10 a month, but it's not just me you would be supporting. Like it's basically everyone on the channel, on the platform. So there are lots of other channels, and I think it's worth signing up to. I was just talking earlier with Rania. You know, she has a podcast with Kevin Gostola, Unauthorized Disclosure. They're also on Rockfin, right? So if you go to the channels on Free Thinking Media, there's Jimmy. Where's Unauthorized Disclosure? I was showing it to you every single time. It's somewhere over here. I'm going to type it. Hold on. There we go. Unauthorized Disclosure. We also got Max Blumenthal. Oh, Ryan Grimm is there too now. I see. Okay, cool. We got Convo Couch, Nico House, Lee Camp. Everyone is here. This is really a good spot to be. So go sign up on Rockfin, and the Telegram link is also in the chat if you want live stream notifications, which I think is very important. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to upload the segments on Rockfin and YouTube very shortly. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care. Ma'as salame. Bye-bye.